General quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
Broadcasting live on WNN 1470 AM, 95.3 FM, iHeartRadio, and the World Wide Web. This is Make America Think Again with your Google Blacklisted host, Tom Trento.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. No, Will Robinson. Danger.
All right, here we are on Monday, the 23rd of December. Beautiful rainy day in South Florida. Got a special two-part show for you. 2 parts to the show. Part 1 is today, part 2 tomorrow. We're going to take a look at Hanukkah. And I think the only way to start this, Mark, I'm going to move a couple of things around. If we can go to...
Oh, you're moving it around. Thanks for telling me right at the last second.
This is a live show. That classic, that Hanukkah classic.
Oh, we're not going with the first one? The first Hanukkah classic or the second Hanukkah?
You want to,
start with the first one.
All right. Let's start with and look, this is just a tease for the opening. I got a couple of little items I got to go through. Then we'll get into the serious study of Hanukkah. But right now, for our Jewish friends, that old wonderful.
I have a little dreidel. I made it out of clay. And when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel I shall play.
Everyone now.
Oh dreidel, dreidel, dreidel.
I made it out of clay. And when it's dry and ready, oh dreidel I shall play. I have a
Okay, enough
I
of the
made
dreidel.
it out of clay.
I have some theological reasons why I have not converted to Judaism, but now I have some musical reasons also. I'm more with the next song.
Next one is better.
The upgraded
version?
Hanukkah song. Yeah.
All right,
here we go.
Back it up a little bit. Because you said you wanted to play this part. Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
Always made me feel a little left out because in school there were so many Christmas songs, and all us Jewish kids had was the song Dreidel, Dreidel, Dreidel. And
that's the reason I backed it up.
I wrote a brand new Hanukkah song for you Jewish kids to sing, and I hope you like it. Put on your yarmulke, here comes Hanukkah. So much Hanukkah to celebrate Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the festival of lights. Instead of one day of presents, we have 8 crazy nights. But when you feel like the only kid in town without a Christmas tree, here's a list of people who are Jewish. Just like you and me. David Lee Roth lights the menorah. So do Kirk Douglas, James Caan, and the late Dinah Shore. Guess who eats together at the Carnegie Deli? Bowser from Shanana and Arthur Fonzarelli. Paul Newman's half Jewish and Goldie Hawn's half too. Put them together, what a fine view.
A little more later on. That was recorded live. Guess what year that was recorded?
93 to 4.
94. 1994, Adam Sandler, Saturday Night Live. He wrote that song, which has become a classic. It really has. And it's very funny, but it's got great points to it. So, Tom Trento, your host on WNN 1107 in the morning on the 23rd. 2 days into second day of Hanukkah. 2 days until Christmas. Man, the Jews and the Christians are celebrating all over the place. But
all right, what's the correct spelling of Hanukkah?
Nobody knows. We have an expert here. And there's
the C things like Chihuahua? What was that?
As I go through the next 2 shows and lay out some of the history, there's a scholarly debate on some issues of the Hanukkah story.
Well, just spell it correctly. That's all.
Well, there's scholarly debate on the proper spelling. But we have a scholar here that can help us out. Dr. Roni Wexler, Israeli, is with us. Ron, can you solve the 5,000-year-old dilemma? Well, no, the 2,000-year-old dilemma. How do you spell Hanukkah?
Hanukkah.
You got to spit it out. Right?
With an H.
Het Nun Vav Kaf Hey. Hanukkah.
Okay, beautiful. And what does it mean? What does it mean?
Yeah.
Hanukkah is an opening when you have a christening of a house, or when you dedicate the house. You call it Chanukhat Habayit in Hebrew, which is a dedication of a house, like when you move to a new house. So Hanukkah was the dedication of the temple that was defiled by the enemies of Israel, by the Assyrians, by the Greeks. And at the end of the revolt, it was cleaned, cleared, purified, and was dedicated back to God.
That's the story we're going to get into.
Well, Ronnie told me something earlier. I didn't know this. Like Hanukkah, nobody cares about it over in Israel. It's like not a big thing. It's like,
Yeah, and part of the reason why we're doing this story, doing the explanation, the historic analysis, is because this Christian right here, me, Tom Trento, I believe it should be more forefront in the mind of every American Jew for sure, because the situation that occurred historically, the military situation, is so relevant to the history of Israel and to the history of Christianity. If what occurred didn't occur, there's a big question as to whether or not I would be a Christian, whether or not Jesus Christ would be around on a human level. So we're gonna go into this piece by piece, but fascinating situation.
I don't want to hear about all that stuff.
I think even the Israelis should hold this more highly because they're in the midst of the same situation today. Very, very similar situation.
You're way too serious. I want to do this.
I know. What do you want to do?
Don't need deck the halls or Jingle Bell Rock, 'cause you can spin a dreidel with Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, both Jewish. Put on your yarmulke, here comes Hanukkah.
Give me the dreidel song again. Give me the dreidel song.
Dreidel song?
No. Hang on to all that. We got 2 days to do this. But we can't, here on the Trento show at 10 after 11 on the East Coast, all of you out there, good friends of ours listening, we can't ignore what's going on in the world as we come into this holiday season, Christmas season, Hanukkah, New Year's, all of that. So I got a couple of items that I just got to tell you about. They're so crazy, but so relevant, so real. I used to live in Denver, Colorado, was a Christian activist there for many years, and great state, great town. It has changed in the past 25, 30 years dramatically. It's unrecognizable. If you lived there in the late 80s, unrecognizable, different place. And just a few months ago, a very articulate AOC kind of woman, 33 years old, in fact, was motivated by AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York. She decided to run for the city council. Now, this isn't the city council of, Bluff Hills, North Dakota.
This is Denver,
where you got 2,000 people in the town. This is the city council of one of the largest, most significant. They got an NFL team, a great NFL team. Used to be great. This is a serious political position. She got elected, mind-boggling.
No way.
As one of the commissioners, or city council people. She's a city councilwoman from the city of Denver. And she is an avowed Marxist. She's a communist. She likes to consider herself a Democrat socialist. This is the veneer we've been speaking about on the show a lot. This is the battle that's taking place in the state of Florida now. The Marxists come in and they put the cloak of democratic socialism, which is crazy in and of itself. And I'm a card-carrying member of the Democrat Socialists. But she also prefers to be viewed as an anarchist. And we're going to play just a couple of words that she said, which caused quite a bit of controversy. Let's play, pronounce her name. You got her name there?
No.
The last name.
Find it.
Yeah. We'll play it and then I'll tell you her name.
I don't believe that our current economic system actually works. Capitalism by design is extractive And in order to generate profit in a capitalist system, something has to be exploited. That's land, labor, or resources. And I think that we're in late phase capitalism and we know it doesn't work and we've got to move into something new. And I believe in community ownership of land, labor, resources, and distribution of those resources. And so whatever that morphs into, I think is what will serve community the best. And I'm excited to usher it in by any means necessary.
That's Candy, C-A-N-D-I.
With an I. Candy with an I.
C-A-N-D-I. And her last name is C-D-E Baca. Chewbacca. Candy
Chewbacca.
Very attractive, very articulate woman.
She got the crazy eyes.
Did you catch what she said?
I know. I was too busy looking at her crazy eyes.
Yeah.
In honor of Barry, who pointed out that whoever has a crazy eyes is crazy in the head. You know, if you go look at people's eyes and you see the whites of their eyes, they're nutso.
That's a truly
it is. It's true. You think about it, it's true. But Adam Schiff has a crazy eyes too.
If you think about it, it's true. Okay. And we'll make a $5 bet on that one. But no, she's a serious councilwoman, and she's there. I read extended material on her. She views her role as an anarchist and to move the country to the left further and further.
Left? Left. If you go any further left, you're going to be off the planet.
Well, yeah. You know, she'll argue she thinks capitalism is in its last phase. Look, this is what we're running against. This is what we're going to be running against here in the state of Florida. So we'll keep our eye on Candy Chewbacca, councilwoman in Denver, see what's going on up there.
Well, that goes also points to a bigger problem, and that's the George Soros types of money flowing into these places where they're going after the city councils, they're going after the attorney general's offices, and they're going after all these low-level candidates. That hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars actually are going into these different low-level races to influence people to say that capitalism is bad and communism is the way to go.
Well, yeah, they hear on the radar. Not radar. The social media is so comprehensive that in minutes you could identify the socialists, the democratic socialists, the Marxists, and the Soros people. Well, let's go take a look, and they make a decision. Is it a nutcase? Forget about them. We're not putting money there. When you have a very attractive, very articulate Hispanic woman who has a following, you go, okay, let's get behind her, and that's how this thing works. You know, that's a democracy for you. But now on to a larger problem. This is a serious problem. It exploded over the weekend by a guy I never heard of. His name is Mark Galli, Galli. He's the outgoing editor-in-chief of what used to be a very substantial Christian magazine, an evangelical magazine called Christianity Today. When I was in school in the late 80s, you had to have a subscription to Christianity Today. It was started by Billy Graham, and it did all the scholarly and in-depth research and interviews of opinion makers worldwide, and it was part of your repertoire of media to research and review in your preparation for whatever theological work you were going into. Oh, well, that has changed quite a bit. And Christianity Today, by their own admission, has become a centrist magazine. They say they're non-political, centrist magazine. But through intensive critique, it's becoming center-left more and more and more. Well, what happened over the weekend has caused a big brouhaha. And I had a lot of friends, Jewish friends and Christian friends, contacting me going, oh, no. People know that the United West is launching a campaign. We've been working on it for over a year to mobilize 1,000,001 new evangelical voters. We have identified the fact that between 3 and 5 million Christian evangelicals do not vote regularly in the state of Florida. And President Trump won by 112,000 votes. And Andrew Gillum, a vowed socialist, doctrinaire, Marxist, is leading with George Soros' money and other billionaire money, is leading a 1 million person new registration for progressive Democrats to flip Florida blue. So when people heard, oh no, evangelicals are bailing on the president. They contacted me and said, what's going on? I started looking into this. And actually, this is going to turn out to be something very positive for our campaign, because it's raising the issue of where do evangelicals stand on the presidency of Donald Trump. Are they for him, against him? And we know a bunch of them don't like the way he is, don't like his morality, so they're MIA or they opt out, they don't vote. Well, what happened here is that Mark Galli, I think we have, he was on Meet the Press over the weekend. Let's play that. It's about a minute piece. I'll tell you what he did, the fallout, and where it's going to go from here. And here we go. And now here we go. All right, we're queuing up Mark Galli's piece. All right, we're queuing up Mark Galli's piece. Mark Galli is leaving Christianity Today. Now, whenever somebody's leaving somewhere and they throw a hand grenade into the building and then run out of the building, you got to take a step back and go, what's going on? He has been at Christianity Today for 20-something years, past 6 or 7 years as the editor-in-chief. Now he's starting his own publication. And what better way to get attention for your own publication than to throw a hand grenade into the middle of something that's controversial to some degree and blow it up to the size of a Christmas present received by the mainstream media. When MSNBC and CNN and the Post and the New York Times, when they saw a leading evangelical call for the impeachment of Donald Trump on moral grounds, when they saw that, they ran with it, and we're still in it. We're still in the vortex of this controversy.
Here we go.
All right, here we go. Listen to Meet the Press. Okay. It's some weird thing our control room is telling us. What he says on Meet the Press, very simple. He's being asked, why did you call for, you're leaving Christianity Today, you're going somewhere else. Why at this point did you call for the impeachment of...
I don't know. I mean, in one sense, my call for his removal was on the order of hyperbole in this regard. The odds of that happening either by election or a Senate are actually probably fairly slim at this point. What I'm really arguing in the piece fundamentally is that the president is unfit for office. Now, that may be a difference without a distinction without a difference. But the point is, and I'm not really speaking politically, making a political judgment about him, because that's not our expertise at Christianity Today. Mm-hmm. I am making a moral judgment that he's morally unfit, or even more precisely, it's his public morality that makes him unfit. Because all of us, anybody in leadership has, none of us are perfect. We're not looking for saints. We do have private sins, ongoing patterns of behavior that reveal themselves in our private life that we're all trying to work on. Mm-hmm. But a president has certain responsibilities as a public figure to display a certain level of public character and public morality. And the point of my argument is not to judge him as a person in the eyes of God. That's not my job. But to judge his public moral character and ask, has he gone so far that the evangelical constituency that we represent, can we in good conscience do the trade-off anymore?
Could we in good conscience do the trade-off? Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with the evangelical world, keep listening to this show, 11 o'clock every day, 11 to 12 on WNN 1470, 95.3. On iHeartRadio, anywhere in the world. You can go through the internet. After the first of the year, if we can generate some more donations, we'll make this a television broadcast also. Got to get a little bit of equipment for that. You can go to the website theunitedwest.org and donate to help us do that. But we're going to be laying a lot out in terms of our campaign to mobilize evangelicals. Even in the Christian world, there's hundreds of denominations. There's two basic branches, the Catholic branch, and then those who protested against the Catholics in the Middle Ages were the Protestants, the Protestants. Those are the two basic groups of Christians, Catholics and Protestants. Within the Protestant group, there's thousands of denominations because groups wanted to have a different form of government. They wanted to have a different kind of church, a different kind of music. Essentially, the Protestants agree on the fundamentals. That's why you hear they're fundamental Christians. But they disagree on the incidentals, so they all have their own little denomination. The Catholics has a strict top-down hierarchy, and that doesn't occur within the Catholic community. Well, within the Protestant community, through the past couple of hundred years, there's been a drift to the left and a response to the right, a more conservative theologically one. And the conservative theological Christians today are called evangelicals, conservative theologically and politically, evangelicals. All the word is, it's a Greek word that means good news. They believe the Bible is the good news for man and that it's good for faith and practice and everything. So the term has become evangelicals, but it gets disparaged and bounced all over the place. But evangelicals are Bible believing, and they hold to the social issues of Ronald Reagan that he was articulating, and pro-life, all of that. And they are classically Zionists. They recognize the unique position of the nation of Israel, that it was a miracle, the fact that Jewish people are alive, and they stand for the stability and security of the nation of Israel. That's why, from our point of view, it makes the most sense to go reach out to evangelicals.
And they vote 85-15.
Yeah, they vote. The 15% are confused, who don't vote, toward a conservative position.
And this guy who just talked is one of those 15.
Well, this guy's a leader in the evangelical world, and he just threw a hand grenade in saying, he's got to be impeached. Now, we're not going to go through the details of it today. I'm introducing a very complicated, but we'll make it easy, and a very complex controversy. But suffice to say right now, here's what's important as you listen to this debate. Is Donald Trump too immoral in his personal life, his personal behavior, to hold the high office of president? That's the question. And you'll hear people on both sides. And right now, Billy Graham's son, Franklin Graham, rallied behind the president and said, look, my father, I never told anybody who my father voted for, but he voted for Donald Trump because he agrees with Donald Trump. And now a couple of hundred evangelicals have come out behind President Trump. And I will detail all of this in future shows. But here's what I want you to think about. If you are flying anywhere today, you're going on a trip to the West Coast, and you're walking on the ramp, getting into the airplane, and there's two pilots there. There's one pilot who has 30,000 hours, but he's a womanizer, and he's got a horrible life. He's had 3 wives, and just 4 bankruptcies. And he's a mess. He's got 30,000 hours. He flew F-16s in the military. He has just been declared the absolute best pilot ever to fly an airplane, but he's morally bankrupt and corrupt. And then you got another guy that says, hey, I'm going to fly this plane. And he's a saint. The guy, he's got 4 theological degrees. He's been a pastor for 30 years, and he's just getting his, he just soloed about a week ago, but he's the most morally perfect human being on the face of the earth. Who are you going to want flying the airplane? Don't answer. That's a trick question.
Especially when one engine's flaming out and the second engine's flaming out.
Switch the metaphor, the absurd metaphor to make a point, to a brain surgeon. You've got the world's best brain surgeon And a guy that, he does okay, but he slips up every once in a while, like on that TV commercial. The guy goes, I do okay. Which one you want? The morally bankrupt guy who is the absolute best brain surgeon in the world to solve your particular problem? Switch the metaphor to you're stuck in a burning car. The car is burning, and you got two firemen. One that really just got on the job, he's learning it, all of that, and you have the best fireman of the department, but he's morally bankrupt. Who do you want breaking into the car and trying to rescue you? And he's done it 100 different times. He's got experience in doing that. You really don't care about on one level, the moral condition of the person who you are asking to rescue you. We asked Donald Trump to rescue us. So is there a ethical conflict between a person who holds to the importance of a moral credibility on a personal level and the acceptance of someone who may not meet that bar? Is it time to get rid of him because we don't like the way he talks? I'm going to leave that question open. We'll talk about it more in the future because we got to get to the Hanukkah story for sure, but we'll follow.
Put on your yarmulke, here comes Hanukkah. The owner of the Seattle Supersonica celebrates Hanukkah.
The owner of the Supersonic.
Not a Jew.
Okay.
But
he said O.J. Simpson.
Hall of Famer Rod Carew.
All right, well, where this starts. Tom Trento here at 11:30 in the morning. WNN 1470 on your dial. Tell your friends we're finally going to start promoting the show. We haven't really been promoting it. We've been working on stabilizing the audio and getting everything sorted out. We need a couple more people working in the control room. But everything's good. We're now going to start promoting it. So start telling people about the show. We'll be doing a lot of different work. We're going to start selling advertising for the show.
And if you're interested, donor who wants to do a significant amount, contact Tom. We'll give you a tour of the studio, show you what we're doing, the whole 9-yard plan. And it's really a fascinating project.
Yeah. So somebody just texted me and said, don't keep saying he's morally bankrupt, talking about Trump. I'm making a distinction. I'll clarify that. I don't think Trump is morally bankrupt by any means.
But you're giving the extreme situation is what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm giving, if you had somebody that was morally bankrupt but the best brain surgeon. So thank you, person who's following me all over the place here, but that's good. It's a friend. So that's good. All right. The place to start for the Hanukkah story. And as a Christian all these years, whenever I came across Hanukkah time and spent time with Jewish friends and dinner or launching it on the first night, whatever, the thing that always was most dominant in my mind was the fact of a miracle, something beyond natural explanation. A miracle is something that the natural world doesn't completely explain. It's supra, above, or supernatural, above and beyond that which we understand to occur on a regular basis. The natural world can be identified and evidence can be presented scientifically. Well, when something is above the explanation of the scientific world, we have a word called miraculous. Well, miraculous presupposes the immaterial world, something out there, and atheists, agnostics don't hold to that. So there can never be anything that's miraculous from an atheistic point of view, only from a theistic point of view.
Only something from nothing from an atheistic world is, but that's not even miraculous, which is totally blows me away. The whole universe from nothing came something.
You're getting,
I don't know.
It's philosophical.
Enough philosophical. That's just what they say. There's nothing there, and then there's something.
Me as a Christian, when I looked at Hanukkah, I saw a little bowl of oil, olive oil. It was sealed, very special olive oil. It was purified and sanctified oil to be used only in the Jewish temple. When it was found, the size of the bowl filled the menorah, and only enough for one day. The various lights, the various bowls, But it lasted for 8 days. Oh my God, it's a miracle. And that was the thing that struck me the most. But through the years, as I've looked into the Hanukkah story more and more and more, I have put aside the miraculous component. There's actually a scholarly question as to whether or not the 8 days of oil actually occurred. We'll get into that in a little bit. But the point, the very, very, very important point that everyone needs to know is that this is a war story. This is a story of battle. This is a story of personal survival. This is a story of good versus evil. This is a story of harking back to David and Goliath, the little guy being the underdog, but fighting from their point of view for the Lord against the big bad enemy. Inconceivable odds, but fighting with a sense of purpose and a sense of direction. It's a war story, and quite possibly because it's such a vicious and brutal, and it's a vicious and brutal war story. It's not a standoff war where two sides shoot missiles at each other and you don't even know that you've eradicated 5,000 people. This is up close and personal. Swords chopping heads off. Poles thrust into the side. Maces, those balls with spikes coming out, smashing into people's faces. People falling down and burning. Elephants being killed and crushing people. Just the most horrible type of warfare you could imagine. But it's the warfare that was required to once again save the nation of Israel. And we go through these 8 days, and our Jewish friends give gifts to each other each night and celebrate the cleansing of the temple and the lights and all of that. I don't know, and this is a challenge not only to Christians to understand the military component that's so important historically, but the theological component of God preserving his people who at times are called to fight a holy war against unholy odds and unholy people. That's the essence of what this is. And I want to walk through it historically and then make that application over the next 2 days within the historic context, and then by application apply what occurred in 164 BCE, before the Common Era, before the time of Christ. 164 years before. I want to apply what happened there to 2020 in the Middle East today. So it's going to be a very relevant historic application to today, drawn from these battles over 3-4 years, 2,000 years ago. It's the same God, the same Jewish blood going through the veins of the same Jewish people today. Absolutely amazing. And as I said, with us is Dr. Roni Wexler. Ron, I'm going to start going through this, but I just want your quick overview on what you see as the important elements for Jews and Christians to understand about these 8 days.
I would like to say that to be realistic in Israel, you have to believe in miracles, because the proof for a miracle is the state of Israel, that by all means should not exist today, looking at the history of its existence. And since the beginning of the state, or even before then, when Moses brought the people to the promised land, obstacles were one after the other, and the odds were always against Israel. So talking about Hanukkah, or Chanukah, were basically one family, one family, not an army, not a group, not a sect, not anything. A family, a father and his children, declared war against an empire, and eventually they won against the Greek Empire. They cleared Israel from an oppression. If this is not a miracle, what is a miracle?
Yeah, for sure. So
was it a big family?
Was it? No, it wasn't a big family.
How big was his family? Was it like 100 or 50 or 10 or what?
It was a family from a small place called Modi'in, which is centered on the way to Jerusalem from the Mediterranean, and whoever controls that part of Israel eventually controls the gateway to Jerusalem.
Okay.
It was a significant place, but very small family.
Very small. About 20 miles northwest of Jerusalem.
So
Modena.
almost
we go
like
there on our trips.
It's almost like a 300 type of thing, where it was like a little choke point.
It is. It's like Abraham Lincoln. One man leading a nation through a horrible time, or General George Patton. One general leading thousands of troops. So
Or like the Spartans.
The family, the father, and then the son Judah, and then the other sons, basically inspired a movement by farmers and regular people, blacksmiths, and people to rise up. But we'll get into that. The whole story starts.
So like a 300. I'd say like Sparta 300, the 300.
Yeah, you could. Yes.
More like that. Okay.
Yeah. You can start at in the beginning, God spoke. I mean, we can start there, but for the sake of our study over the next 2 days, we'll start in around 356 BC, before the Common Era. A guy was born by the name of Alexander. He became very great, a Greek, and a Greek who was in a substantial family. And he was schooled. This is interesting. Alexander the Great, he's the great because he became a phenomenal military leader at 20 years old. He was schooled, but they had homeschool in those days.
Right.
And Alexander was schooled by Aristotle.
Yep.
Aristotle gave the training in classics and logic, and reading and writing, all of that, to Alexander. So he was a very, very intelligent guy. And at 20 years old, he launches his military career. There's a whole bunch of reasons why. But he conquers the Greek areas, goes over through Istanbul, and comes down through Israel into Egypt in 333. So he's about 356, 33. You got to do the math backwards. 356. He's 22 years old.
Incredible guy.
And he's conquering Egypt. The Greeks you talk about Sparta, the Greeks were amazing warriors. They had the latest military hardware. They were great metal workers. They were phenomenal archers. So they had, the fiery balls where you could shoot the catapults. So he assembled his army, and in those days, to develop your own land, you had to go to where you knew there were resources and money and laborers and slaves and all of that to send them back to keep building the Greek cities. So you just advanced, and you took over one town and the next town. You enslaved them, and then you gave them instructions as to how they want to stay alive. They got to work these mines. They got to produce this material, ship it back here. And he just slaughtered people.
And the Gordian knot is actually a good parable for Alexander, because he just sliced through problems. He didn't try to untangle them. He didn't try to unwind the problems. He just says, okay, this is the way we're doing it. We're slicing right through the problem. And that's a whole metaphor of the Gordian knot, tying the Gordian knot.
But one of the key methods that he utilized was whenever he would conquer a people, he knew that religion is dear to people, that people will live and die for their religion. So he said, look, and wise leaders always do this, particularly military leaders that conquer people. If I could let them do their little stupid religion and still get them to do the work I need them to do, it's a win-win for everybody.
Right. Romans.
If I try to make them change their religion and I got to fight them, what's the sense of that? So when he blasts through Israel and Jewish people there in Jerusalem, he basically said, look, do whatever you want. You do your stuff, but I need all this work. I need this kind of production. And life was okay. In fact, you got these nomadic people, the tribal people, the Hebrews, the Israelis, the Jews. You have them there, and they were knowledgeable, but they weren't worldly. The Jews weren't traveling all over the world and involved in military campaigns. Now, all of a sudden, you have these thousands of people coming from various lands, because the Greeks would assemble mercenaries from other lands to join with them and other cultures. So now you have the introduction into Jerusalem, into Israel, the introduction of Greek thought coming from Aristotle and Plato, the Hellenistic. Hellenistic is just another term for Greek lifestyle. And it was a completely different world philosophically than the tribal world of Jews. The Jews were agrarian. They were sectarian. They studied their scriptures and raised their families, but basically kept to themselves. Now you're hearing about thoughts of other writers and musical instruments and an appreciation for the arts and the gymnasium, the sporting events, and all of this stuff.
And the mother goddess stuff.
Wow. Well, the theological framework for the Hellenistic Greeks, for the Greeks, was you can go to Greek and go to the pantheon. Two Greek words: pan, all, theos, gods. They had all the gods. It was a god for everything. And in fact, when they'd conquer people, they'd add their god to whatever it was. Oh, your God, Jehovah, we'll throw him in here too. Yahweh, no big deal. So they had this cosmopolitan worldview that now collides with the Jews of Jerusalem. The Jews of Jerusalem going, wait a minute. We have to honor our God, Yahweh. We have to follow the law. We have to do all these things. Now, there's another way of life, and you see this happening. And whenever there's a new culture, it's happening to the Islamic world a lot, where they're breaking out of their hidden life for hundreds of years, and they're going into Western countries, and their kids are getting westernized. Well, now the Jews are getting Hellenized, and within Israel itself, there's a debate. Hey, how far do we take this? We can't have other gods before us. So those seeds start growing in the around 300 AD. Alexander, not AD, BC, before zero.
Right.
Now Alexander dies a few years later. He died at 33 years old. And he's a great story if you ever want to look into a little bit of history. Very interesting story. But part of the influence of Alexander was the northern areas. When you come to Israel with us, we're going on May 18th through 29th in 2020. When you come with us, we go right up to the northern border of Lebanon and then the eastern border of Syria and Jordan. All of that area, all of Syria, the Lebanese area, came under the Hellenistic influence of the Greeks. And as the years went by, the Greek influence was there, but different leaders would grow and develop from the patronage of Alexander the Great. So in Syria basically was a Syrian Greek empire. When I went to school, to Bible school and seminary, I studied the Greek language, to be able to translate the New Testament, Koine Greek, particular type of unspoken Greek that was used back then to write it was the common language. Why am I studying Greek? I'm in the Middle East. Because 300 years earlier, Alexander the Great conquered the Middle East, and the influence of Hellenistic life became part and parcel of every educated person. So when the stories of the New Testament had to be written down, they were written down in some of it in Aramaic, most of it in Greek. That was the common written language of the day. And it goes back to Alexander the Great. So now we're coming to around 168 BCE, and the Syrian world is controlling Israel. And at that point, the leader of the Syrian Empire was Antiochus III. He was the king of Syria from about 200, 222 or so to 186. But he was at war with the king of Egypt, King Ptolemy. Starts with a P, by the way. And the battle was over. Who's going to control the land of Israel? Antiochus III, the Syrian ruler, beat the Egyptian ruler right around 200 or so BC. And Israel became part of Syria. The Jews at the time had no fighting capability and no interest in fighting. They, whoever our ruler is, it is, just leave us alone. Well, at first, Antiochus III said, I can do the same thing that Alexander had. Leave the Jews alone. They got to do their work, provide the resources for us. Everything will be okay. But then all of a sudden, Rome now starts battling with the Greek Empire. You remember Rome followed the Greek Empire. So Rome is starting to come down and smack around Antiochus III a little bit. And he starts saying, hey, wait a minute, because Rome is telling Antiochus, we'll let you stay there, but we need more production. We need more gold. We need more silver. We need more resources. We need more slaves. So Antiochus turns to the Jews and say, guys, the party's over. And I'm simplifying this. Guys, the party's over. You got to give us some more gold. You got to give us some more silver. And I hear you got a lot of that kind of stuff in your temples and all of that. You make fancy things out of this. I may have to have a little taste of that. So now around 168 or so BC, the Jews start recognizing, we got a problem. All right, let me stop there. And Ron, we're in 168 AD. What's going on in Jerusalem? What's life like for the average Jew in Jerusalem in 168 BC?
Well, it was a time of peace. It was a time that Jews lived their lives. There were many who did not convert, but were Hellenistic in style, and this Hellenic idea was always in contrast with the Jewish way of life. But it was more or less a peaceful situation. As a matter of fact, you mentioned before Alexander the Great, and many Jews actually called their newborn boys Alexander because they appreciated his rule and allowing them to keep their lives in the way they are accustomed to. So when the Syrians came to Israel to take the gold and silver, as you mentioned, the Jews there got caught up in a situation where they were not prepared at all. Not only that they weren't prepared, but when the Syrians came and defiled the temple in Jerusalem, not temples, but temple in Jerusalem, and slowly but surely decided to bring down the Jewish idea, allow other gods to be served in the temple of Yahweh in Jerusalem, sacrificing impure animals, including pigs. That created a situation where not too many Jews were been able to tolerate. Nonetheless, they weren't prepared to fight a war at that particular time.
Yeah, and the trouble really started, and it's 11:52. Tom Trento, your host, with J. Mark in the control room, and Roni Wexler. We're all here. And today and tomorrow, we're going to lay out the historical context for this 8-day celebration of Hanukkah, right? The 8-day celebration. But the point I'm stressing, and I want Christians and Jews to understand this is a military celebration. It's a victory. It's a military victory. It's almost like D-Day.
Right.
It should be viewed that way. Now, historically, as the Jewish canon, the Jewish scriptures were coming together, there's a real question among Jewish scholars: why didn't we emphasize the military component of the history that took place that saved the nation? Why didn't we bring that out? In fact, the story of the Maccabees, the story of the cleansing of the temple, is not in Jewish scriptures. It's not in the Torah. It's not in Protestant scriptures. It's in the Catholic Bible. The Catholics took the first and second book of Maccabees, and they said, we believe this is canon. The Jews and the Protestants said, well, there may be some issues with it, may have great history, which I believe it does, but the Jews of the time of putting the canon together didn't want to appear like we're a big fighting force. We got a little tiny country with a few people. You don't want to be some big gigantic military power. You just want to kind of get along to go along to get along. We're going to look at that, but I think that's what needs to be reversed. I think Jews and Christians need to say, hey, wait a minute. This is a miracle of God preserving the nation of Israel in ways that it should never have been successful in light of the overwhelming odds. Let's look at that. Look at the divine, miraculous intervention of God in our life and live that way as people of faith today, facing bigger and more dangerous enemies than were back there. That's where we're going over the next 2 days.
And if you look at
55 after Tom Trento, hang on, Mark. I want to go back historically now to Antiochus III. He was the kind of benevolent ruler over the land of Israel, coming from Alexander the Great. Right now we're about 170 BC or so, 170 years before the time of Christ, before the Common Era. And he dies, and his son Seleucus takes over. With a name like Seleucus, you got a problem. Seleucus did not have his father's benevolence toward the Jews. He said, you know what? These people are aggravating me. They can do more work. And some of them are resisting the wonderful culture of Greece. How could they resist the arts, the humanities, the classics, theater? How can they, what's wrong with these people? They all read and study by themselves and stick to themselves. We got to shake these people up a little bit. So Seleucus starts putting pressure on some of the elite. Now, there were elite religious leaders in Israel. Some of the priests bought into the Hellenistic view. They said, you know what? Judaism would be better if we integrate a more secular view of a world, a culture from various parts of the world. And this is that assimilation versus domination issue. Well, so internally, there's tremendous pressure by the highly educated Jewish leaders against the more agrarian, not highly educated Jews who were doing all the labor and the mines and the farming and all of that. So you have this internal theological battle now going on around 170 BC, and you have the external forces of Syria through the king Seleucus putting pressure on all of Israel, all of Jerusalem, to start producing more and taking more. So that's the historic context where a very interesting high priest by the name of Yochanan, he saw that Judaism is in tremendous trouble from this infiltration of the Syrian Greek influence in the Holy Land. I got it. And something has to be done. And what he does and what he says change the course of the world. What this high priest, Johann, says, in an effort to maintain his integrity and belief and humility before the Lord, what he does radically and dramatically changes history. It changes every Christian's future life from back there and every Jew's future. what happens? Well, you're going to have to tune in tomorrow, and we'll tell you all about what happens. We'll take you into the front lines of about 5 battles. We'll take you into some amazing moments. We'll take you into the cleansing of the temple. And yes, we'll take you into the oil with one day, but somehow, Ron, it lasts for 8 days. You going to be here tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I just have one last thing to say, Tom.
What's that?
And Landers and her sister, dear Abby. Harrison Ford's a quarter Jew. Not too shabby.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Some people think that Ebenezer Scrooge is. Well, he's not. But guess who is? All 3 Stooges.